in hand right now. Um, so yeah, my friend Rob Greenfield, he's an activist with sustainability. And he had invited me to be a contributing author on a book called Zero Waste Kids. And it's full of 30 activities that you can do with children to just to learn more about how to live a more zero waste life and create more sustainable actions within their life. So I'll have a picture of it actually on the end of my presentation for all of you to see it, and I can tell you where you can get one if you'd like one. So yeah. Let's see, I have to click through this here. Jennifer, would you like me to get started on my presentation?
Yeah, that'd be great. Thank you.
All right, I am going to share my screen here. Let's see. Can you see it okay?
Yep, you're good.
All right, perfect. Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Yeah, my name is April Hepokoski. I run Zero Waste Duluth here in Minnesota, in the Duluth area. And so I've been teaching classes on zero waste living for many years now. And I wanted to do something new today. I want to talk more about how we can use the zero waste lifestyle to connect back to nature again. This is something that has been so important to me as I have been doing this work. And this lifestyle just naturally brings you closer to nature and how to live more in harmony with it. So first, I just want to start out with a background about me, because this really lays the groundwork for what I'm going to go into with this presentation today. So my why behind why I live a zero waste lifestyle, what got me started was that I was diagnosed in 2014 with SIBO, which is small intestinal bacteria overgrowth, and endometriosis. These were really debilitating conditions that I had. Every month I had pain so strong from endometriosis. There were times it was hard to breathe. I had to walk like hunched over. My body shook uncontrollably. It was so painful. And with SIBO, I was pretty much nauseous 24/7. And they really affected my life a lot, where there were a few days within each month where I wasn't able to teach. I'm a teacher, a preschool teacher at a nature-based school here in Esco. And I couldn't teach because the pain was so bad. And so when I was diagnosed with these, I was given treatment options for endometriosis. It was either to be on hormone pills daily to combat the symptoms I was having, because a lot of it is about having this hormone imbalance. And so hormone pills were able to regulate that more. Unfortunately, those didn't work for me because they were making me really sick. And so that wasn't an option. And the other option was to have a fairly major surgery of a hysterectomy. And I wasn't willing to have my organs taken out. I wanted to see if there were other routes that I could go on. And for SIBO, it was potentially that I'd have to be on antibiotics 2 weeks on, 2 weeks off for potentially the rest of my life, depending on how my body was reacting to it. And so that was also something I was not willing to do. And so I had asked my doctors, are there any other treatments that I can do that are more natural, that work more organically with the body? And their answer was no. And that was the whole catalyst to my entire lifestyle change with my health, with how I live more sustainably. So many things were affected by this, but those were really the main two. So I decided to not go with any of the treatments that they had offered me. And instead, I started researching on my own and was being an advocate for my own body. And what I was finding as I was researching was that when plastic is in contact with our food, some plastics anyway, can leach chemicals into your food. And then when you eat that, you're eating that chemical, and it can mimic the hormone estrogen in your body. And that was a big player in my endometriosis, was that I had this imbalance of estrogen and it was causing all these horrible symptoms. And so I was like, okay, well, pretty much everything in my pantry and my fridge is wrapped in plastic. And so I was trying to figure out, like, how do I buy food without all this plastic packaging around it, and just try to minimize my exposure as much as possible to that. And so that's how I came across zero waste living and just the lifestyle is how basically I was looking at how to buy food package free. And so that's how I got into this. And then I started going to a kinesiologist and a chiropractor to gain my health back more naturally with supplements and adjustments. And I also started studying energy medicine, which is something that I use all the time now, working with the energy of our body to bring on healing. And so those were two of the main things that have brought me to such amazing health now. I can happily say that I don't struggle with SIBO or endometriosis. I can't say for sure if I'm cured of them. I want to be careful with that word. But what I do want to say is that I don't have to take anything for those conditions. I was told they were incurable. I personally do not believe that because I don't struggle with them. I don't have to take anything for them now. I just really have to be mindful of what chemicals I'm using on my body and putting in my body and using in my home, and other things as well, too, which I could go more into that, but for this presentation, I won't. But and then in 2019, I was diagnosed. Well, not really diagnosed, but as I was going to the kinesiologist, we found out that my really bad reactions on my skin were coming from a nickel allergy that I had. I knew I had a nickel allergy from a long time ago, but I didn't realize how extreme it was. I didn't know that nickel could be in our food as much as it is, this metal in our food. And so once I started learning about this nickel allergy, and how many foods are really high in nickel, I started to eliminate those from my diet for, a temporary time just to see if it would help. And my skin rashes, which were horrible, they were blistering and everything, they went away within 2 weeks. And so that really started making me think about, as a whole, how is metal getting into our food? And how are all these different chemicals and things getting in there and then getting into our body? What are we doing as a culture to make it where just the food that we're eating can be so toxic and cause that much disharmony in a body? And so I'm just really happy to say that I don't struggle with these things anymore. I'm very conscious of what I eat and what I do. And I just want to share this with the world because I think it's such important information. So this is the background to what I'm going to go into now. So first, I'll give you a quick thing about what a zero waste lifestyle means. What does it mean to live zero waste? It's really about making intentional choices regarding the trash that we send to the landfill. Often if you hear about zero waste, you hear about it a lot with like the amount of trash that we create. But it's also about just the resources that we use in general. We're a highly consumer-driven society. They found that we see about 5,000 ads per day. So it's just constantly driving in this need for needing more and wanting more and taking more from the earth, when really we can be much more intentional about what we are using. And also zero waste is about keeping materials within a reuse cycle. And for me, it's also, and I know for a lot of people too, it's about trying to, as it's said in this quote, emulate sustainable natural cycles. And that often involves materials that are more natural. And I'll go into that more after. So living zero waste tends to follow these 5 R's. I also use other R's as well, but I'll dive into these. If you want more information about how I live by these 5 R's and others, I will be doing other presentations that I can tell you more about at the end of the presentation here. Going into that, I am going more into how to connect into nature in this presentation, but I do want to give you kind of the scope of how you follow a zero waste lifestyle and what that looks like. So when you're looking at bringing materials into your life, and then disposing of them somehow or reusing them or repurposing them, we look at these 5 R's. So first we want to refuse things that we don't need. That's like those single-use like plastic straws or packaging and things like that. If we can try to refuse that stuff in the first place, that's going to make the most dramatic effect on the amount of resources that we use and the amount of toxic type materials that can come into our homes and bring exposure like that. It also reduces your landfill trash and what you are putting into the recycling system as well. So we want to try to follow these 5 R's in order as much as we can, starting at the top. Try to refuse as much as you can first. Of course, we still will use things, but just looking at things more intentionally and asking, do I actually need this? Or is there a different way of acquiring this item without creating the trash or taking this type of resource? The next one is reduce. Reduce the amount of things that you own, reduce to things that you love and use and like really want in your life and need. Reduce to just those things and then declutter the other things, make them available for other people to use. The next one is reuse. Reuse things instead of choosing single-use items. So that would be like choosing a reusable straw, one that's more durable and that can be used over and over and again versus a one of the more flimsy type plastic straws that really can only be used so many times before they start breaking apart. Looking at different things like that. The 4th R is recycle. Try to recycle things when you can so that it's staying within the reuse system as much as possible. Recycling, it is not a perfect system at all. That's why it is so far down this list. One of the reasons anyway, is that we don't want to take in materials into our life just for the fact that we can recycle it. Preferably, we would try to refuse those types of items, reduce, and then try to find reusable items before using a material that we will in the end have to recycle. And then the last R is rot, which is composting, returning those nutrients back to the earth and instead of sending it to a landfill. So going back into trying to use zero waste as a way to connect back to nature. In nature, there is no waste. We are the ones that are having all of this litter and pollution that's coming out here. And like if you were to look at a tree, anything that is naturally growing in nature, it is like the leaves fall off the tree, they go on the ground, they are then used on the ground and then made back into soil or used, by those organisms in some capacity. And then it creates this great fertilizer and other things for more growth to happen in nature. Everything in nature is being used. And so there is no waste. And so when we are looking at bringing materials into our life, we want to try to bring items in and use things that like we want to keep in mind the item's complete circle of life. So is this a material? Like wood, for example, is this an item made with a material that could be in the end returned back to nature, not contaminating it and even better, adding value to it. So we want to ask ourselves as we're bringing things in, how will nature be able to use this material? How will it contaminate the environment or add value to it? if we can, we want to try to live in alignment with nature systems as much as possible. Now, of course, there are going to be things where we bring in more synthetic type materials like plastic, for example. I try to avoid that stuff when I can, but there are so many things in my home that are made out of plastic, for example. I'm not saying that we can totally remove these things from our life, but as much as we can, try to find ways to use materials and items that are more in alignment, so that when we do have to dispose of it, it can be returned back. And some things will add value, like if we have a material that's like made out of wood, or something that can be put into a compost, returned back to the earth, it can add value to it. But some things might just be more neutral when it gets into the environment, and that feels okay too to me. Like glass is a more neutral material. I use a lot more glass than I would like plastic, and I'll go more into detail on stuff like that after too. So we're really looking at trying to use materials that can break down with the earth's natural cycles, and that's often in like a compost pile. And then the next thing is try to vote with your money as much as you can. Whenever we are buying anything, acquiring new items, we are voting with our money. And so if we can try to support companies that are trying to use more natural materials, biodegradable materials, that is, to me, the best way to try to get more of this type of stuff into our economy and within stores that are more widely available and just more commonly used, is just by supporting them, by voting with our money. So when we're thinking about using all these different materials, this is just really coming from my perspective. You could say it in many different ways, I'm sure, but you could say that materials are synthetic. I often just say it's more of an unnatural material, because I try to look at everything as the viewpoint and within the scope of the nature cycles. And so just unnatural, it's not being made in nature. So to me, an unnatural material is a material that nature doesn't create on its own. Like plastic, it cannot break down at a rate that's comparable to materials that nature creates on its own. So that's how I look at it, and that's how I try to view the things that I'm bringing into my life and that I'm using. So if you can, what I do is I try to choose more natural materials over synthetic or unnatural materials, ones that to me, they're ones that can fit into that last R of compost, and they can easily get composted in a backyard home composting system. If I need a synthetic material like plastic, I try to get it in something that's more durable and long lasting rather than a single use item, just so that it's not having to be sent to a landfill right away, or potentially when we're using those things constantly, like say like a plastic straw, if we're constantly using those and creating that demand, there's more of a chance for those things to get out into the environment as litter, even though we try to get them to the landfill, which isn't the best either. It's not good either, but it can get out into the environment and then it can't break down properly. And it can, as we've seen, like with the turtle, it can go up into the noses of animals, like that video with the turtle, or different things like that. So as much as I can, I try to find things that if I'm going to bring something in that's more synthetic, it will be long lasting and it won't break apart right away. And if you must use single use, I try to go for materials that can be given back to the earth through my compost system at home, which would be like a brown paper compostable plate versus like a styrofoam plate that would not be able to be given back to the earth. And then I wanted to make a note too on this about compostable plastics. Compostable plastics are a little bit tricky because they often require the high heat of a commercial composting facility to break it down properly. They don't break down, the backyard home systems don't have that high enough of heat to break it down all that well. So you'd have to bring it to a composting facility. It's better than using a plastic material that you can't put into the compost, even if it is a commercial composting facility. But again, I tend to stay away from the compostable plastics just because I can't use them here in my home compost. And if it gets out into the environment, it doesn't break down with nature. It needs a special system to break it down properly. So oh, that picture there is just me with one of my cloth rags that I used over and over and over again. It's 100% natural material. And so that's something that then I can try to reuse that material if I can. But this material, because it's 100% natural, it can be returned back to the earth in my compost system. So it's just one little example. I wanted to go a little bit into metal, what my viewpoint is on metal now that I have been dealing with the systemic nickel allergy for so long. And it's really opened my eyes to how much food has a high metal content. Specifically for me, I look at a lot of the nickel, but I started looking into like what type of research studies are out there. And it's really actually hard to find things about it. But what I was reading on the EPA with Environmental Protection Agency, what they have been finding is that some metals can be toxic in very minute amounts. And what's very tricky about metal contamination is that there isn't this visible evidence like what we see in this picture here. This is very visible contamination of our environment. This is a landfill, the Duluth Superior landfill actually here in Minnesota. And you can see the litter and the contamination that has happened on our earth in this area, in this landfill. You can see the plastic bay, you can see all of this trash. And a lot of this stuff is plastic-based materials, synthetic-based. And so, but metal contamination, how it gets into the environment, a lot of what the EPA is finding through these anthropogenic activities, those are activities that they introduce metal into the environment. Now, metal is this, element within the earth, right? It is a natural element that we are digging up. We are moving it though. We're mobilizing it into our environment through these different ways like mine smelters. Firing ranges are often something that will introduce more metal into the environment. All these different things here, urban runoff, landfills, junkyards, industrial point sources, all of that. Those were ones that the EPA specifically mentioned that introduce quite a bit of metal into the environment. So when it does get introduced into it, we are often not seeing the evidence of that metal contamination like we are here with this landfill picture. So that makes it kind of tricky to know, like, where is it? What is it doing? You need like actual studies to really look at where it is in high concentrations and where it's going, what it's doing. And so that was just something that I've been reading about. And then a study that the EPA had done was on metal contamination and what is happening when that gets into the environment, what's happening with aquatic organisms specifically. What's happening is that their survival and reproduction and behavior is all being affected when they are exposed to these toxic concentrations of metal, basically. And the metals can reach the water bodies through the air when it's released into the air, in the water, or the soil. And these are some of them that they had mentioned in that study was arsenic, cadmium, chromium, copper, lead, inorganic mercury, nickel, selenium, and zinc were ones that can cause toxic effects. And so when we are engaging and supporting these different anthropogenic activities by consuming a lot of different things made with these materials that they are mining up, like the metals, we are supporting that each time we are buying something. So what I try to do is I try to limit the amount of things that I buy that's in metal, that's made with metal, just because of how it can get into the environment. Of course, there are many things that I still use that are made with metal, and I can't completely get rid of what I would be using. And I'm not even saying to do that, but I am just mentioning this so that we can try to be more observant about what is happening down the line, or just even at the beginning, when we are mobilizing all of this metal. So I want to jump into different examples of what I do in my life to try to use more natural materials instead of like synthetic, like plastic or even metal. I do this a lot because of my health, but I also, through my research now, I do it for the health of our earth as well. The health of our earth, I feel, is a reflection of the health of our own bodies. We are all interconnected and our actions affect everything. So I broke it down into different areas of the house. I figured that was probably the easiest way to show you different things that I do in my home. So what I do is I like to use a lot of glass. It's more neutral. It doesn't expose me to chemicals and things. So I use glass containers over plastic and metal. One thing that I have learned through this metal allergy was, at first I was reading about it and then I tried it. And it was very true to what I was reading, that food that's cooked on stainless steel, it can leach metal, specifically nickel is what I've been looking into for myself, into your food. And so especially when you cook like more acidic foods like tomatoes on stainless steel, that especially can leach more of the nickel in. How I found that to be true was that I cooked on it and I got a metal reaction, or the nickel reaction on my skin. And so I don't cook on any stainless steel. I don't put my food in any sort of stainless steel. Of course, this is specifically for me. I have this allergy and I'm not trying to put this on anybody else. I'm just explaining it from my perspective, that showed me that metal does go into our food and can cause a disharmony in our body when we are cooking on it, when we're using it too much. And so that's just something for you to take and do with as you want. So what I do is I cook on glass and ceramic when possible. Also, with like going back to like the 5 R's of zero waste, other things that you can do to be more connected with the earth. And because when we connect with the earth and with nature and with its cycles, and we're trying to live more in balance with it, we're just going to, I don't know, I feel more healthy in that way. And the earth will be more healthy. So different things we can do in the kitchen as well is compost food scraps. I just have a bucket on my counter and I put all the food scraps in there that I can't feed to my pets. I have chickens and goats and mealworms and red wiggler worms, lots of different animals that will eat the food scraps. So first I feed it to them and then I compost whatever else I can't feed to them. And so that's a way to just return those types of materials back to the earth and add more nutrients and value to our earth and our soil. Grow and forage your own food. A lot of food comes in the plastic bags or the metal containers, like the metal cans. And so if you can grow and forage your own food, and then what I do is I like to can it myself in glass jars, and that's a great way for me to be able to lessen my exposure to those different types of toxins, as well as connect more with nature. I'm getting out in nature when I'm growing and foraging my own food. And I'm not having this fear around eating wild food either. I'm learning about it. And when you connect with it, it feels so much better. So I highly recommend that wherever you are, find somebody who can teach you about foraging. It's a great one. And if you're not quite ready for that, start a garden and grow your own. And then, yeah, also other things you can buy in bulk. If you're, growing and foraging is hard to do 100% of your food that way. So if you can, try to buy in bulk when when you can, what I do is I go to the co-op and I use my cloth bags and my reusable containers like jars to buy food items in. So I'm buying them more package free. And then more with the kitchen. Our homes are often filled with unnecessary appliances. So going to this reduce mindset, right? The 5 R's, we're on thinking about reduce. What I did when I was first starting out, I looked in my kitchen and I just had so many small appliances that I really didn't need to have. I had a blender, a deep fryer, waffle maker, toaster, juicer, egg sandwich maker, a mandolin slicer, slow cooker, a rice cooker, a pressure cooker, like so many of these, which often do have a lot of plastic and metal. And I was trying to reduce my exposure to that stuff as much as I could. And so I just started to simplify my kitchen. And so I just condensed down to a few. What I found was that most of the stuff I already had things that I could use. I had my oven, my stove, and those were great for doing most of this stuff. My stove, I could just cook the rice in with a pot, one of my ceramic pots. And so I didn't need the rice cooker. My oven toasts bread just as well as my toaster does. So didn't need that. A pan cooks an egg just as good as an egg with one of those egg sandwich makers, and I can put the sandwich together myself. And like the mandolin slicer, something that if you take like a zucchini and you want to make zucchini noodles with, I found that when I open up a spaghetti squash, it has a naturally made noodle type squash in it. So I was like, oh, I wouldn't even need that. I can just buy a spaghetti squash and use that instead. So it was just, I was having fun with it, being creative and finding ways that I could reduce the stuff that I had in my home. So for the bathroom, there are different things that I do to connect more with nature and to try to reduce my exposure to more synthetic materials. There is a zero waste store here in Duluth called Ren Market, where I can get toothpaste tablets. Wherever you are, there may be a zero waste store or a co-op that might sell those. Otherwise, online too, I'm sure you could get them in like a glass jar or something. That's basically just, you're not buying toothpaste in a plastic tube. Instead, you are buying these little tablets that you can use instead for toothpaste. I use a wooden toothbrush. That way I can compost it when I'm done. The one pictured here actually has plastic bristles, so I wasn't able to compost that whole thing. But now there are some that are made with 100% biodegradable materials. So check those out sometime. Something else that I do, I like to, well, it started with my health. I wanted to use things on my body that were made with food, because the skin is like the largest organ on our body. Whatever we put on it, it goes into our body. And so any chemicals like with shampoos, conditioners, lotions, things like that, when they are put on your body, it's going in and it can affect your hormones. It can be endocrine disruptors, all of that. So I really got pretty picky about what I was putting on my body. And now most of the time, besides some soaps, I do use like bar soaps to like wash my hands and things, but a lot of what I use now are food products. So I went no poo, which is it's no shampoo basically. I buy rye flour in bulk at the co-op and I mix it with water to make a paste, and I wash my hair with that. It actually really takes the oil out of my hair. Some people, it might not work well for, so really take this for what you can do for you and your body, but this is just examples of what I do. I use aloe vera gel. I grow aloe vera plants in my home, and I use that plant for conditioner in my hair. I do use some bar soaps to wash my hands after like using the bathroom. I use a hairbrush that's not plastic. It's made with boar hair, actually. That's something that a lot of people use when they go no poo, because it helps to move the oils around on your hair more. Or most of the time, I just let my hair air dry and then I just comb through it with my fingers and I don't use a brush at all. That's what I do most of the time. Our bodies are naturally made to do these things, and we kind of forget about them because it is such a consumeristic society. We're always looking for something to help us with things, but really, like, my fingers do just as good of a job as my brush does. And then also in the bathroom, I use more natural fabric washcloths. So 100% fabric washcloths instead of paper towels or things like that. Also, like with using the toilet, I have natural fabric, about 4-inch squares that I use as toilet cloths. You might have heard them as like a family cloth. That's another name for them. It's just basically a reusable cloth that you use instead of toilet paper. Other things, like here in Minnesota, we have this mullein plant that gets these really soft leaves. You'll see it pictured here in that bucket. And you can pick those leaves and they work really well as toilet paper. So I use that as well in my compost toilet, actually, which is just a simple bucket system. And I use ashes from my fire or sawdust and use that in there. And all that waste can then get composted and returned back to the earth. So many different ways that we can connect back to nature through living a more zero waste lifestyle. If you're not ready for those big changes, like a reusable cloth instead of toilet paper, you can get toilet paper that's not like wrapped in plastic. You can buy it, just they're more individually wrapped in paper is all. So another thing is I often just go natural with makeup. I often don't wear makeup. I do like to wear it on occasion, but really not that often. Makeup is, again, something that can add those endocrine disruptors. They can have that in them. So I'm pretty careful about what type of makeup I wear. It's usually is more organic. But most of the time I just like to be natural. So your wardrobe, what I like to do, I try to use 100% natural fabrics as much as I can. I do have some pants that I wear that have plastic fabric. I'll go into what those are called after so you can see. But something that I like to search, this is kind of a trick that I've learned, is if you search elastic-free clothing, you will find clothes that have zero plastic in them. Rogonique is a great brand that I have found that has zero plastic. And that, again, is just trying to steer clear of those synthetic materials that when they get into the environment, they contaminate and pollute. So when you can, try to go as much 100% as you can with that. And there's so many different fabrics now that are made out of natural, and I have a list after this. Otherwise, like jewelry, if you can try to go for more jewelry that's made with more natural stones rather than like plastic beads, for example, that's a great way to connect more with nature, find value in it. Shoes, most of the time I'm barefoot. I live in Minnesota, so it's winter half the year. Of course, I'm not going barefoot then. I do have to wear boots that are synthetic. They're made out of plastic. But in the warmer months, I'm barefoot most of the time. I love that connection to the earth, being grounded into the earth, feeling it on my feet. I know some people can't go barefoot just with how their feet are. But if you are somebody who can, I highly recommend that. It's a great way to connect more with the earth. And I've actually found that my health is better when I am barefoot more. For some reason, being connected that way is very grounding and good for my body. So, and I feel it would be for other people as well. Otherwise, for shoes, look for more biodegradable options. I love the Bed Stew brand. I found they had sandals that I had got that were like pretty much 100% biodegradable materials when I had called and asked them about the different things that they used in them. So that's one that you could look into. Something else with clothes, when you're drying them in a dryer, with a lint, when it's 100% natural materials, it can be composted, or it could be used as a fire starter. So that's another fun thing that I've figured out. And then also I like to dry a lot of my clothes just by hang drying. Again, finding how nature can help us with these different things without having to even have a dryer in the first place. Again, there's a lot of that metal and plastic that we'd be using. So just simply hang drying it. So some natural fibers that you can look for your wardrobe: cotton, linen, silk, hemp, bamboo, wool, jute, tencel, nettle, ramie, lotus fiber, banana fiber. Some of these I really don't see much at all. It's mostly cotton, some hemp, a lot of wool I wear in the winter. And then more synthetic ones that I try to avoid are polyester, nylon, fleece, acrylic, spandex. So those are ones that you can look for as well. I just look at the tag. What I did was when I was trying to go for more 100% natural clothing, I just took all my clothes out and I got rid of any clothes that had any sort of plastic fiber in them. Even if it was like 95% cotton and 5% polyester, I still got rid of it because I wanted to try to be as 100% as possible so that when that fabric was no longer usable, I could return it to the earth. And so the next one is decor in our homes. What I do with decor as much as I can, I try to just use nature. I find nature so beautiful, and this is just another way to connect with it. So what I like are rocks and crystals. I like to have a lot of plants around. Bird nests and beehives. You can see my Christmas tree actually from last year. I used all these different natural materials like rose hips and dried flowers, bird nest, pine cones with natural twine. And I had put salt on them actually to make them have that more glittery look. Glitter is plastic based most of the time, and so salt is a fun way to get that different look. You could just go simply for a more minimalist look too. Again, thinking about that refusing and reducing things. How much do we really need to make our homes beautiful? But I do love to have some decor up. It just brings me joy, and I'm sure it does for a lot of people. So I just try to bring in as much nature as I can, like a pink Himalayan rock salt lamp. I like to get from the co-op actually the beeswax candles to burn in there. I love feathers too. I have like peacock feathers up in my bathroom. And so there's so many different things in nature that you can use. And with kids, you can, I run a preschool. I don't have children of my own, but I do run a preschool. So I have a lot of kiddos. And kids can make a lot of trash if you just with their art materials and toys that break. And so I try to look for toys that are more very durable and more natural. So like those natural blocks. I do have toys that are made with plastic, but I try to when I can, if I do buy them that way, again, to have them more durable and long lasting so they won't break and I'd have to like throw them away. So yeah, more natural materials. I have a lot of loose parts out for their play from nature, like seashells, flower petals, earth clay from our ground. You can just buy earth clay as well. All these different things that are listed on here are, a lot of them are things that we have in our art area, because art is something that I love that children can open-endedly create, but then it does create all this trash if you have like a lot of plastic-based things like glitter and gems and different things. So I try to just keep as much of it as I can more natural. So those are just different things that you can do in your home with children. And then like more natural based paints. I make my own paints out of like beet powder and spirulina powder and turmeric powder. So you can see that picture there. And then also I try to choose experiences over things as much as I can. Children really don't need as much as what we think that they need. They actually really thrive in a more simple environment. And so like with my school, it's a nature-based preschool, and we go out to the woods and we don't bring any man-made things out there with us. The children are learning to have creativity and imagination outside in nature. They can pick up a stick and it can be so many different things. It can be a cane or a sword or a paintbrush, whatever they want. And it just really facilitates a lot of learning and play. So that's just choosing experiences over things is going to create a home where you're not having as much stuff that you're trying to manage and dispose of. And I just want to end on a few things, and then I'll do some questions. It's just really important for us to practice gratitude for what nature offers. When we have gratitude for things, for something, we tend to respect it and care for it more. We're not, when we have gratitude, we're also not looking to bring in more things too. So like, I have a wood stove that I heat my home with in the winter time. And so I'm lucky where I have wood surrounding me, where I can just go out and I can collect all the dead branches and the fallen trees and I can use them to heat my home. And I'm so grateful for that I can just go directly to nature and it can provide for me what I need. So where can you get started with this? There's a lot of information, but what I did to start out was that when I wanted to start living a more zero waste lifestyle, create less trash, I just looked into my garbage can and I did a trash audit. I looked at what type of trash I was creating and I picked one thing that I wanted to not make that type of trash anymore. What I started out with was chip bags. I love chips. And so I had multiple chip bags in my trash can, and that was creating a lot of the trash. And so I'm like, okay, I'm going to not buy chips in a plastic bag anymore. Instead, I'm going to just figure out a way to still enjoy chips, but not create that trash. So first, I started going to Chipotle and getting it in the paper bag because at least I could compost it. But I wanted to do better than that even. So then I started making my own chips. And now I make apple chips by foraging apples and dehydrating them into a chip. I make kale chips from the kale from my garden, or just even kale from the store. You can make your own potato chips. There's all kinds of fun things that you can do, and you just have to get creative and have fun with it, but just take it one small step at a time. And eventually you'll get to the point where you see in this picture where this was a challenge that I did, where I tried to live for 1 month with not creating any more trash than what would fit into this mason jar. And this was all the trash that I created in 1 month after the month was done. And so you can see most of it's all plastic based stuff that I couldn't do much with. It had to go to a landfill. And so it's just a fun way to start reducing the amount of trash and resources that you use. And it's a way to start small. So just pick one thing and focus. What I did was I focused on that one thing for like a month until it was really ingrained as a habit. I'm not buying chips and chip bags anymore. I'm doing something different to enjoy this. And then after that month was done and it was instilled as a habit, then I chose something new to focus on. So then eventually over time, I reduced the amount of garbage I was throwing away. And I love this quote. I think it's by Henry Ford. He said, "Whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right." And I truly believe that's true. When we put effort and energy into something, we are going to find ways to make it happen. And so living zero waste and trying to create less trash can feel daunting, but we can do it, and people do it. And it's really about just taking one small step at a time. So this is the book I was talking about at the beginning. This is the one that we just put out, I think in February it came out. So it's really new and it's a really great book. I highly recommend it. Rob Greenfield is the main author on it, but there's many of us contributing authors who wrote the activities in the book. And so I wrote 13 of the activities in this book. And so you can get that. You can get it on Amazon. You could get it from really any bookstore worldwide. Just talk with them if they don't have it in store. You could have them order it for you. Otherwise, you could go to Rob Greenfield's robgreenfield.org, I think is what his website is. And you can find out how to purchase that too. This is just a great way. There's a lot of fun illustrations in there for kids to be really engaged with living a more sustainable life. So otherwise, if you want more from me, I'm on Facebook and Instagram. I'm at Zero Waste Duluth, so you can follow that if you want. And then I also blog on Zero Waste Nature School. That's my blog about my preschool and what I do with the children here to try to reduce waste with them. And yeah, I think that's it. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we can take questions if anybody has one.
There was a question about cooking with cast iron.
Cast iron. Okay, yeah. I am still learning about cast iron. I cook on it and I have not had any ill effects from it at all. And I'm really sensitive to metal, so especially the nickel. The stainless steel is the one that I'm very wary of actually, because they often use the nickel in it to make that. And so that it's coming from my personal perspective, but cast iron so far has been fine for me, and I've heard it's actually more neutral of cooking. It can add like iron and stuff into your food, so it depends on if you are sensitive to that, or some people actually need more iron. So I'm not against cast iron. It probably depends on each person, but yeah.
I was going to say the same thing. I've heard that folks with iron deficiencies should be cooking with cast iron as much as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. Do we have other questions? Now is your time. You can go ahead and unmute and ask away. Okay, Louisa asks, when it comes to gardening, do you do anything special when it comes to water and soil?
Like our soil, we just add our compost to it. And then I run a farm, and so we use the manure in that. Yeah, and then water. No, we have our well water, and so I feel comfortable with that. So I don't know if some people use city water, if they, what they feel about that, but yeah, that's my situation with gardening anyway. Or we use water from our ponds. We have some ponds around here, so.
Terrific. Teresa asked, aside from the co-op, where else do you shop locally? You mentioned Ren Market, which I love Ren Market. It's so great. And if you guys aren't familiar, it's in West Duluth on Grand Avenue, about 2 miles down from the co-op. And they offer co-op owners a discount. So monthly you can get 10% off of your purchase.
Nice. Another place too in Cloquet is Cloquet Natural Foods. They do the bulk foods. You can bring your own containers and all that. Super One is one that I go to for at the meat counter. They have like the meat and the cheese counter there. So I bring my reusable containers there. I usually go to the West Duluth one, but I've had luck at Kenwood too. Just buying meat in your own reusable container. And they often have the lake trout and more locally caught fish there, which is really nice. So you're not getting fish from ships from far away, you're getting it right here local.
Emma would like to know, how long is the process for human waste to break down in your composting toilet? Then afterwards, are you able to amend your soil with it?
Okay. It seems to break down as quickly as everything else. They do recommend that you let it sit for like a year or two. Most people I've heard just let it sit for 1 year before you start using it in things. I don't tend to use it in like a food garden. It would be more in like a flower garden or something. Or I just have like it out in the woods, you know? So, um, yeah, but it doesn't take any longer than anything else. They just recommend a certain amount of time in case there's like that bacteria or anything in there. So,
Solon would like to know, what do you use to cover your glass bowls?
oh yeah. So some of them I do still have a plastic lid on. Again, I don't try to get away from all plastic. I'm just trying to minimize it as much as I can. So like my glass bowls do have a plastic lid. Um, I do use beeswax wraps quite a bit. And then for ones that don't have lids. And then I also have these really nice square Pyrex containers that have a silicone and glass lid. It has the silicone like seal, but then the top is made out of glass. So those are what I prefer. And so when I've had to buy new ones, I have gone for those.
That reminded me, I've silicone, I can't spell. So we have stasher bags at the co-op, and those are a silicone bag. They come in various sizes, and they're on sale. They're 10% off all month for Earth Month. And then if you're owners, you also get $1 off starting on Mondays. So those are amazing. I love mine. I use them every single day. They're microwave safe, dishwasher safe. You can freeze them, you can cook in them. And they're super easy to clean. So if you're interested in something like that, that's a really good product to have. And the bees wrap is really cool stuff too.
Mm-hmm.
So for folks who are interested in obtaining the video from today, I put my email address in the chat again. It's easier for you to send me an email versus me trying to collect everybody else's emails. So it's jgilbertson@wholefoods.coop. Ed would like to know, which is better or worse between stainless steel pots versus nonstick pots like Teflon coated aluminum?
I think that's going to be probably a personal preference. I think a lot of people would say Teflon would be worse. I would probably agree with that. For me personally, I view them the same, just because of my allergy. And I have to be so careful about any sort of metal getting into my body. Yeah, I would say probably Teflon would be worse. Yeah.
Kit would like to know, what was the lid you mentioned?
On the square Pyrex.
Yes.
That it has a. I wish I knew the brand of it so I could tell you. It just has a silicone seal around it, and then it has a glass top on it. So the glass top, it has the silicone lid, and it just presses onto another glass container. Yeah, I don't remember what the brand is though, but you might be able to find it just by searching for that.
Awesome. Any other questions? April, you were going to mention your upcoming, your other events.
Yeah, thank you. So if you go to my blog, Zero Waste Nature School, you'll find an events page on there, and it lists all the events that I have going on. Some are virtual and some are in person. So you can check that out. For those ones, I'm going to be doing my typical zero waste presentation where it's about how I use the 5 R's more specifically in my home to refuse, reduce, reuse, recycle, and rot. So it just gives really specific examples on that. So if you want to go to those, that will be a different presentation. And yeah, so go to the Zero Waste Nature School blog and on the events page, and there are links for where you can sign up to those. So
Fabulous. And those aren't on Eventbrite, correct? I just want people to know that they
I
have to
don't
go to your.
think so. I don't think they are.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you're interested, definitely check out the blog Zero Waste Nature School. And you can find more information on that. And again, if you're interested in other co-op sponsored classes, you can visit our website, wholefoods.coop/classes, to see the full list. And again, if you're interested in getting the recording, you can send me an email directly, which was in the chat. So it's just jgilbertson@wholefoods.coop, so .coop. Well, thank you so much, April. This was a wonderful treat. Lots of really awesome ideas and really great information. I had no clue how much, plastic and metals are potentially getting into our foods. So it's definitely eye-opening.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, and thank you for letting me try out this new class. You guys are the first ones I've tried out that presentation on, and so I'm kind of just gathering all my thoughts with everything. And so, yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Well, it was fantastic. Thank you, everybody, for attending tonight. I hope you all enjoyed our time together, and have a wonderful rest of your day. Take care.
Bye.
Thanks again, April.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thanks for having me.
Anytime. All right, take care, everybody.